Our next speaker wants to ensure that the new members of our club, which is 4 out of the 8 that's in here, is set up for success in Toastmasters by being able to navigate and use pathways. By providing the basic navigation information, our members can work on their speech projects and complete the Toastmasters Club mission, which is to provide a supportive, positive learning experience. Each of our members are empowered to develop their communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. This is not something that you're supposed to memorize, but doing this quite a lot of times and serving as president of the club, I have said this quite a lot of times. Here to present from the project, the Level 4 project. Let's see that page. Working on his Level 4 elective projects, question and answer session, where the objective is to learn and practice facilitating a question and answer session. Present to you, me. Distinguished Toastmasters Noel Gane, Pathways 101, Pathways 101, Noel Gane. Clap for myself. Thank you so much for that. As Chris had mentioned, something that was brought up on TLI was having a plan for our success in this club. There are 6 educational goals that's listed in there: 4 level 1s, 2 level 2s, 2 level 2s, 3 level 2s, or level 3, 2 level 3s, 1 level 4 or 5 or DTM, and another 4 level 4, level 5 DTM. That's a lot of goals, but you're trying to figure out what exactly is this. With having almost half of our members being in the club for less than 2 years, I want to give this opportunity for everybody to understand more about pathways. For a lot of the old-time members, this is not an endearing topic of pathways because they prefer the manuals that we used to have, but we need to move on to the 21st century where most of the learning that we do is online. And it helps us because we can stop where we're at, grab some popcorn, come back, and continue with whatever you're working on. And it's very helpful because you can see some of the videos. It gives live demonstrations on certain things, and it helps us out. So for a lot of our new members, they actually don't know how to start off when it comes to pathways. What I'm going to do is demonstrate quite a few of these things. This is a danger when you do a live demonstration, but we will do this. We're going to make this work. I'm showing you right now the Toastmasters website. We have 2 websites in this club. One is the club website, that's the DeKalb Area Toastmasters, DeKalb Area Toastmastersclubs.org. And that's where you sign up for your speeches or what role you want to take. And then also some downloadable stuff so you can learn a little bit more about your roles. This website is where you do a lot of the business on Toastmasters, whether you are a member or a district leader, one of the regional advisors, or even Toastmasters International folks. This has all the information that you need, everything from pathways, anything that we buy for Toastmasters. And just to let you know, Curtis, we did create, for Chris, we did create our own version, which has 10 times more of the stuff that's in there, because we have a copy of the icebreaker, so I'm going to give this to you so you can check it out. There's also a welcome letter that we're going to ask you to update because it has, not me, but Bill Smolo's information on it. And also a what to do during a Toastmasters meeting. It is a modified version, thanks to one of my friends from Northwest Suburban Toastmasters, who's also a member of District 54. We will have that available. But some of the information that you find in here, including the educational program and also the magazine, if you want to take a look at it, some of the events, as in this August is going to be the Toastmasters International Convention, first time held live because we've had it online, and it's going to be in Nassau, Bahamas. I'm going to show you a quick look of the pathways that's found in the Toastmasters website. Once you log on, which is, by the way, your email address and your password, you can go on this welcome part and go to the home portion. And this will take you to these 3 areas. It's going to show Basecamp, which is where you find pathways, some of the learning hubs, which is the resources that you need, whether it is the evaluation forms that you need, or some of the other tools that Toastmaster has, and then the achievement board and recognition. So that's where you can see when you've completed any kind of roles, if you've successfully coached a club, sponsored a club, or even in educational individual sponsorship, and all the offices that you've held, whether it's in the club level or the district level. This portion is for club members, especially for president and secretary, as we have the annual business meeting. This happened in the Toastmasters International Convention in August, where there is a vote from the president as well as the secretary. But if you can't attend to go to the Bahamas, you can certainly give your proxy vote to our district trio, the district director, program quality director, and the club growth director, to vote on your behalf. Hence the club proxy and voting instructions. Lastly, you have the club central, anything you need to know about your club officer roles, and also the tutorials. Those are videos. But this is what we're concerned about. Base camp. As you can see, I belong to 3 clubs. I happen to be I'm the secretary in this club, which means I am also a Pathways base camp manager, hence I have that access below. I am also the vice president of education of Yes and Toastmasters, and in Glendale Heights, I'm a nobody. I'm just kidding. I am actually the sergeant at arms, so I don't have access to the base camp manager portion. I'm going to show you on the DeKalb, signing in under DeKalb and not my other clubs. And I have to thank you, Mayor, for making sure that this library is very well stocked, especially when it comes to the internet, because it's amazing when we're so far down and there's no cellular signals. This works best. You can see here is the paths and learning that I'm working on, some of the speech evaluation, and then tutorials how to go around not only on how to use Basecamp, but also how to navigate on some of your paths that you have. Now, somebody who's probably one of 8 people in District 54 that's completed 2 paths and actually become distinguished Toastmaster in Pathways, you will see some of my extra stuff that's actually been pushed off. But right now, it's showing that I'm working on 2 paths, engaging humor, and then also the persuasive influence. That middle one was when Pathways was being rolled out. I served as one of the Pathways guide and showed a lot of the clubs when we were rolling it out. I'm going to the persuasive influence, and you will see that there are 5 levels on this. You will start off, when you start on this, is you will have 3 projects that's listed in, 4 projects that's listed in here. It shows that I've completed them. When you sign on, you're going to see how far along have you completed. You see a check mark on it. It says it's been completed. There are 4 projects on level 1. It's the same thing for all 11 paths. Now, if you ask me if I know all 11 paths, yes, I do. We'll talk about it later. For this, they're all the same. Icebreaker, which is the first project that you will do, and that shows you pretty much the starting of your baseline on giving speeches, so you know how well you can present. And at the same time, this is also your icebreaker. You introduce yourself to the club. The other 3 projects is involving with speech with a purpose. As you've noticed, Chris has given a speech with a purpose. It explains, this is my goal. And then you will break it down in an organized fashion. The 3rd section in here says vocal variety and body language. So if you've noticed, I've stepped myself off in here. Normally, I will do in stages and moving around, but if you notice, I also, the hand gestures that's involved. The vocal variety that comes along with it is if I was giving something, I would not be talking in a monotone voice, but if I want to make sure that I inject a little bit of energy to it, especially if I'm doing a little bit of storytelling, pull back my voice, and now you're going to stream to listen to it. But if I really want to get excited and make sure I make my point, you see that vocal variety. Lastly, you have evaluation and feedback, where you give the same speech twice. You give a speech, somebody gives an evaluation to it, and they say, I noticed that when you give the speech, you tend to look down. You give that same speech again sometime down the road, and you remember the feedback that you got was to look up. This project also includes serving as an evaluator, so we know that you understand what are the things that you're looking for, because if you can understand what are things that needs to be improved upon, that also improves your speech. Each one of these things, and make sure you turn off your pop-up blocker on this, it will give you this thing, and it's cranking out right now. I made sure it's a full-size screen because you will see that there are arrows. It's not as visible here, but there are arrows going forward and back. And each of these sections you can go through. And it explains to you exactly what you need to do. And you will have this assessment of skills. You need to complete that in the beginning saying, how comfortable are you on a scale of 1, running away, you don't want to give a speech, or 2, please put me up in front to give a presentation. How comfortable are you about giving a speech? And each one of these things, there's a total of 10 questions, and then you submit, then you move on. The nice thing about this is because this explains to you on how you do your presentations. You can move back and forth on this, and then they even give some videos on this so you have an understanding on how you give your speeches. Some of them might have a question and answer section that you need to complete, but at the end of this, if you notice, I'm just going in the bottom right here so you can see what's going on. Is completing the assignment. And it tells you, here's your project checklist. And that is pretty much the same thing for everything where it says, reach out to your Vice President of Education, schedule when you're going to give your speech, practice your speech, organize it, schedule, and then prepare for it. Here are your resources. You have the evaluation resources, which you can also find on our website. And then print my project. This is this one right here. I took the time to print out the entire project. If you really want to take the time, kill trees, I'm quite okay with that. My former company, Nalco, loves you killing trees because they work on the chemicals for treating paper. You also have the Icebreaker Speech Outline Network, which is right here, and explains this is how you write a speech, a basic speech. You have an introduction. Here are my 3 points. Here's a breakdown of each of these points, and at the end, here's a recap of those 3 points. And for me personally, I always like to have a call to action, which is something that I'm going to be doing at the end of this speech. And it also explains the how to evaluate. There's a link to it that shows you this is how you do evaluations. And one of the reasons why I wanted to show the difference between the printed one and this one is because this one gives you the videos that shows you.
There are at least 2 members who present speeches. These speakers don't just stand up and start talking. They use the guidelines in their designated education manuals to prepare their presentations and reach the objectives for each speech. Every speaker who has prepared speeches in advance enjoys one of Toastmasters' greatest benefits, evaluation. Think of it as having a friend watch you practice a speech and then give you helpful feedback. The speaker usually meets with an evaluator before the meeting and asks the evaluator to pay attention to certain aspects of the talk. After all the speeches are done, the evaluators present their feedback in front of the club, covering areas such as, did the speakers use their hands to gesture well? Did they control their voices throughout the speeches? What did they do especially well, and what are some ideas for improvement?
And again, as I mentioned, the nice thing about the learning management system that's online is you can stop, go do a bio break, come back and finish whatever you have that's going on. And maybe it gets really busy and you have to go to work. Then you can stop, continue where you were at afterwards. Where do I start from this? Now that I've shown you pretty much everything that's in here. When you start on Toastmasters website, and you haven't picked the path, this is something I'm going to make sure that everybody, I believe, Curtis, you have signed on, right, with a path?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Julia, I know you have. Curtis obviously has, and I have done it. And I know I need to check to make sure, because the last time I talked to Liz, she was working on it. But everybody else in the club is enrolled in Pathways. If you have not, down below you can actually see in the resources on here is to sign up on speeches. It doesn't have it on mine because I already completed it, but you can do the Pathways resources, and it explains to you doing the Pathways assessment. As I mentioned, there's 11 paths. It focuses on leadership and also on communication. Some people who come to Toastmasters, because remember, over 16,000 clubs, that means probably 130,000 people that have joined Toastmasters currently, and they all have different purposes why they're joining the clubs. It could be somebody who is learning this for their work. It's professional development. Some people who come here are retired folks. They like storytelling. Some people join Toastmasters, and we do have somebody in our district that joins Toastmasters for one specific reason. They want to become the world champion of public speaking, which is the contest that's being held in August. It starts on the club level and moves all the way to the world stage level. Once you win that, you're pretty much a professional public speaker, and that helps out. But everybody has different goals. Maybe when they do for professional development, they are afraid to come up here. They want to do presentation only. Some people who come here are going to be managers or supervisors at work. They want to make sure they have those skill levels. So Toastmasters came up with 11 of those paths, whether it is dynamic leadership, leadership development, persuasive influence if you're a salesperson, innovative planning, one of those very artsy, very thinking kind of type of people. You have strategic relationships, you have team collaboration, you have effective coaching, you have motivational strategies. All those have a little bit of balance between the leadership skills, where you do projects from your own work and not something the Toastmaster wants. It's based on you, as well as some speaking engagements that you do. The other two are strictly on the presentation level on speaking. Engaging humor, and then presentation mastery, where you get projects that you will see, and I will show you here. Some of the projects that you see are tied into, make sure I have this set. Some of them are tied into simple projects, whether it is the vocal variety or anything like that. But some of the projects that you'll run into is tied into specifically what you deal on a typical meeting, how to facilitate a meeting. There is an evaluation that comes along with it. And I'll give you an example on any of these things. Some of them are elective, some of them are required. But here's an example on the level 5, I believe. Some of the projects that you will see in here. One is called Prepare to Speak Professionally. Moderate a panel discussion. One is called Dealing with a Difficult Audience, where we plant people in the audience to interrupt your 5 to 7 minute presentation with things that you normally see. You will love that. You will recognize certain things as the person who tends to interrupt with questions that have absolutely nothing to do with your presentation, or the person who seems to just talk to somebody else right next to them, or better yet, the person who will argue with you about something about somebody else and has nothing to do with the meeting. What happens when you have an interactive presentation and I ask Chris, what do you think of this? And it says, great. And that is the answer. You will learn how to draw that person out to make sure they learn how to do that part of the presentation. I believe I've hit the 15-minute mark a long time ago.
Yeah, 17.
Okay, so I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this over. If anybody has any questions of everything that you've seen in here, I've given an overview so you have an understanding of how the pathways work, how you sign on, and understand how you navigate on some of these presentations. It can't possibly be this quiet. Yes, Curtis.
So honestly, I've been in Toastmasters for about 16 years now, and this was before technology became a big thing. One of the big reasons I wanted to join it was because I enjoyed going in person, but now there's such a push to be hybrid and do all this stuff virtually, but I just want pen and paper. How can I submit it so I still get my pathways or whatever you call them? Can I do that via paper?
I did not plant him in this audience, but we have some members in District 54. It's kind of interesting. We have not only have some members that of a certain age. I'm over 50, so I'm quite happy with it. But there are some people that are not on the Gen X level that are not comfortable of doing learning management system. Is it possible to do pathways on a printed level? Yes. Because Toastmasters understands that in the 14 regions around the world, internet connectivity doesn't happen often. You can order the stuff or print it on yourself. Some people who are just determined not to do anything online, and we're okay with that because that's how the world runs. But you can do the same project. As I've shown you, I printed out the entire pathway. Once I complete the project, I can submit it to my Vice President of Education and say, hey, this has been completed. They have to fill out the paperwork since they're Basecamp managers, that they can check out and say, hey, this person has completed level 1, and then they submit the educational award. So it is possible. Out of the 11 paths, I believe 7 of them are able to be printed out or even be ordered through Toastmasters International and sent to you. But for me, I can print stuff out directly from my own printer, and I'm okay with it. Yes, Keith.
I was curious, with your experience printed and online, what is your favorite part about the online that was not available in printed form previously?
Okay, so the question that Keith has is, what is the advantage or disadvantage on either, whether it's printed or on the online level? As a person who's completed Distinguished Toastmasters twice or 3 times on the paper route, the traditional manuals, and then the first person to complete the online version, and I'm working on my second DTM right now. I'm actually less than 6 months away, sorry, to complete it. When you compare on the number of projects, they're virtually the same. Because in the old system, it was going through, I believe, 4 levels on the written side, and then there were 3 levels on communication, but it was not distinguished by paths. The total number of projects is roughly around 28 to 30 projects that's in there. All of them give speeches. Some of them were projects. The one thing that I thought went well when it came to the books was because I always knew if I can pull it from all my stuff, and way too many of those things, I can look back on exactly what I wrote down. Physical handwriting, and it's perfect. It's the same thing on the online. It's just a little bit different. You'd have to upload. If you run into any Gen X, Millennial, or Gen Z, which I believe some of them are, they can scan and then upload it. Makes them happy because they're very tech-oriented. One thing I like about being online also is, if you notice, I can see all the projects all in one shot. Before was you had to buy the books. Unless you were at a Toastmaster store and you could look at the books and say, here's the project for this book, and there were 5 projects that was listed in there. This is so nice that you can see some of the projects, and you can repeat some of these projects to your heart's content. Because the fact that, if you notice on here, it says on level 3, the requirement for level 3 is that you do 1 required project. Think of it as like the college where you had to do required electives, and then here's the elective projects. It says you have to do understanding conflict resolution. That's the project you have to do for persuasive influence. The elective projects, here are your choices. You only have to do 2, but if you want to do them all at the same time, Toastmasters is not going to say, hey, don't do it. I already did the using presentation software. Some of these projects have overlaps because I could give the same exact presentation, and it can also show on creating effective visual aids. But I also did the making connections through networking. I can choose any of the 14 that's listed in here. So that's very helpful, is you can do 2 if you want to do 3, because all you need is to do 2 of them. But if you want to try some of these things, connect with storytelling. That's a powerful thing that they have in corporate America. When they do corporate storytelling, they tell a story about fishing, and it turns out the point of that fishing story was leadership. In the old days, it's called parables in the Bible. I'm quite okay with that. But it does explain to you, how do you do connective storytelling? You only need to do 2, but you can do 3, 4 of these things. Connect with your audience. Talk about a topic that they don't understand and you relate it. Put some kind of analogy that works for it. Same thing with doing focus on the positive. This is where you give those speeches that has a positive impact. They also have social speeches where you are forced to, yes, this is why the Toastmasters name came about, was somebody giving a toast, is to give those speeches, whether it is on a wedding, when you give the toast speech, or a eulogy. That's part of the social speeches that you have. See, delivers social speeches. Are there any other questions?